All right, Robyn, thanks for coming on and doing this. I appreciate it. I know, I before we get started, I know I wanted to kind of get an understanding of like what before you had talked to me and reached out to me, which was I think serendipitous, right? I mean, it was just like
Mhm.
out of like sheer frustration for what was going on.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, what were you doing and what were you trying to accomplish with your kiddo before you had reached out to me? Like, what have you tried prior?
So we've tried everything. We went as far as medically trying to figure out if there's something wrong. We were told when my son was younger that he had severe separation anxiety, just struggled with generalized anxiety. He had a therapist. We had a family therapist. We worked with his
For how
pediatrician.
long? How long were you doing that? How long were you doing that for?
He was 2.5 when we started. And then when he
Okay.
reached 4, he had it was like almost exactly on his 4th birthday. He had a complete change in his demeanor and was like uncontrollable. Like it didn't matter what we did. We could not help him get through like any kind of anxiety that he was having. He would just like completely shut down. He struggled at school. He struggled at camp that summer. And that's really when the sleeping thing kind of started.
Yeah,
We noticed that his anxiety turned into like a severe fear at night, which
yeah,
then led to none of us sleeping. And that's when I ultimately reached out to you. But we went as far as like, we had a therapist that we would see and that he would see on occasion. And then we actually had him tested for pandas, which is like,
yeah.
can be caused from like strep because we thought like, what the fuck? Like, sorry, I don't mean to swear.
No,
Like
no,
what
yeah.
happened?
No, speak candidly. No, speak
Okay.
candidly because people
Yeah.
need to
Like
hear like what it was like because it's hell, isn't it? It's like
it's
pure hell.
hell. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was like, this can't be us. This can't be the way we're parenting him to have led him to this path that he was on. Um, yeah. So we were dying when I reached out to you.
yeah.
We were
And
ready to try
did
anything.
were you also doing like all? Because I know like the gentle parenting thing is like the thing right now. Everybody's like
Yeah.
hell bent on like
Oh yeah.
when you came to me. How much were you in that sphere of thought?
Oh, I was completely in it from every mom group I was ever in to asking for advice and them just pouring out like your son has emotions, he needs to be heard, he needs to be understood. But my understanding of that was talking to him and talking to a 4-year-old about his feelings is just irrational. Like in the sense that I was trying to have a full adult conversation with him and he can't articulate the exact feelings he feels and he just gets frustrated, right? And he can't,
Totally.
the way I'm talking to him is not helping him better understand his feelings. So yeah, it was
And even with professionals trying to talk to him about his feelings, it was still kind of like not working.
exactly. Yeah. And we went as far as getting him like books specific for 3 and 4-year-olds, like dealing with anxiety. Like, oh, Ruby has a worry. Well, guess what? Now my son's worry is enormous because he knows that there's kids that feel the same way.
Totally. Thanks, Ruby.
Thanks, Ruby.
thanks, thanks, Ruby. Really appreciate it. Well, not
Yeah.
only, not only that. So like, how bad did you feel like you were failing too? Because it just wasn't getting any better. You
Oh,
were like listening to
literally.
all this nonsense.
It was insane. Yeah. And I would stay up most nights with him and just talk to him about the anxieties. And then I wouldn't sleep. And then I get frustrated. And then I get mad at myself because I'm being a reactive parent and I'm not there for my son. And I don't know how to talk to my kid. And we have a terrible relationship. And you go on this like
Yeah.
tangent of all this stuff that, all the gentle parenting is making you feel like you should be doing. And it's not working
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, it's because you're a failure, not that gentle parenting is a failure, right? Of course.
Exactly. Right.
Of
Yep.
course. Yeah,
Yep.
totally. So we talked for an hour. I think it
Yep.
was a little bit, maybe it was a little bit over an hour. I walked
Yep.
you through my framework. How different was the framework that I gave you in comparison to everything else that you had read?
It was mind blowing. Like
It was
literally it was
completely
like,
different.
it was completely different, but it made sense. It was just literally changing the way that we approach the situation and just simply changing the way I was wording things to him instead of me being so like empathetic, but like to a fault, like I kind of gave into his feelings and that made it worse for him and I didn't realize that. So kind of
Yes,
learning to acknowledge him through the conversations I have with you and just saying like, all right, buddy, like we're here to support you, but giving him the autonomy and helping him understand like truly like what are his strengths and how can we build upon his strengths so that he's not focusing on all the negatives.
totally, totally. In
Yeah,
the old pattern, how much did he like himself?
he didn't. He
He
even
didn't
still, they
like
still have
himself.
No. When he's like going through, when he's had a tough day and like we're trying to talk to him even now, like he will say things like that seem very like down for he's 5 now, but to say things that are just like, man, like that's really heavy, bud. But we'll kind of talk to him and remind him, these are the things you're really good at. And like, look, you applied, he's just super empathetic kid. So, okay, he was invited to a birthday party. Like, they must really like the way you treat them to invite you to a birthday party. Like, that's really cool. Like, you're not just being invited for the sake of being invited, and reminding him of that. And then you can kind of see like a light go off, and then he kind of forgets about it. Right. He's not sitting there dwelling on the negatives of life, which he definitely was
Totally.
before.
Totally. And so when I shifted gears with you, a lot of parents, especially the ones that are in the gentle parenting kind of mindset, when they hear consequences, they think that you're being mean and abusive.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
I brought up consequences and how I taught you how to leverage them and use them, was there anything mean or nasty or horrible about the process at all? Or was it extremely loving and reasonable?
It was extremely loving, for sure. Yes. And I remember talking to you about that and being like, well, what's a consequence, right? Like, I mean, timeout can do things like to a certain extent, but that wasn't really where we were headed. And he's not really learning from that, right? So I think just talking to you and understanding that a consequence can be simply as, all right, you're not getting dessert tonight. That's not being cruel. Like the kid's not starving, or your consequence is the next day you're not going to be able to watch your show after school. It's 30 minutes. Go figure out something else to do. You have plenty of toys. Be outside.
Yeah.
We're not like,
Yeah, we
we're
didn't
not
crush
over
his
here.
soul. We didn't crush his soul. There was no soul crushing.
Yes,
Everyone thinks
exactly.
I'm out soul crushing kids. They're like, "Oh, do you mean we're going to hurt their feelings and they're irreparable?" It's like, no,
Yeah.
they're not going to die. They're not going
Yeah.
to die. Because we've started using consequences, and you're using that to create some sort of cost, so he starts to care and come up with his own strategies. When he has successes, how does he show? Like, what do you see him react and respond with?
It's his behavior. I feel like the way he carries himself is just completely different, and he's less like naggy. And that was part of like that separation anxiety that we would see. Like he would just constantly be on my person, and like I was overstimulated, but I feel like he's not like that. He's not as needy, and he's more apt
Yes.
to like try something new instead of like waiting for us to be like, it's okay, buddy, go try that, you know?
Oh, so now he's taking more risks independent of needing you to
Yes,
go and help him get to the. Oh, that's
exactly.
fantastic.
Yes.
Is he starting to feel like a sense of pride? Like, do you see him like now when he does sleep in his room? Because that was the main struggle, right? That was one of many, because separation
Yep.
anxiety as a whole, but like was one of the main ones. Like when he does sleep in his room on his own and he is successful, how does he carry himself? What does he say?
He just says like, I'm super proud of myself, mommy. Like, wasn't that so good? How did you and daddy sleep? He'll ask us like how our night was. He just, I don't know. He'll just wake up and be like, that was awesome, mommy. I didn't wake you up. Did you notice I didn't wake you up? Like, yes, I did. Thank you.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So
Yeah.
he's so much more proud. And is he a lot less anxious because now he's like finding that he can do it on his own? Like he's found a stronger
Yes.
sense of himself, and he's got like strategies under his belt now?
Yeah. And we actually, so another area that we had struggled with a lot was just like going to school, right? So that's part of the separation. And
Yeah.
he had one day, this was kind of in the midst of figuring out the nighttime thing, where he completely kind of reverted back to what he was doing, lost his marbles at the bus stop, would not get on the bus. And normally the normal me would have been like, come on, honey, like, let's put you on the bus. Like, we're going to do this, and like fight him tooth and nail to get him up there. But I literally, like, no emotion, just said, okay, buddy, like, this is what you're choosing to do. I sent the bus away and I said, your consequence, I didn't do really that delayed because I was a little upset, but I was like, your consequence is to
Totally.
go to
Hey,
your
listen,
room.
you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. I told you not to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's
So I
not going to be
sent him
perfect.
to his room for the
Yeah.
morning, and I said, you're going to go up there until we bring you to school. Mommy and daddy have to work. So we can't hang out with you. You got to go figure out something to do. So he did, and he came downstairs and he goes, okay, I want to tell you what was wrong. So normally, like, we would have, in that moment when he was super heated, we would have been like, buddy, what's the matter? Oh my God, why are you freaking out? All this stuff. And then he told us, and it was just like, done. And I drove him to school that day, and I was like, this is not going to ever happen again, but I'm so glad you talked to me. And he went to school and had a great day. And it was just like the next day, no issue. So
Have you had a problem getting him on the bus?
not since, nope. Because he didn't like going to his
And
room for half an hour.
yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Not only that, let me ask you a question. because these interactions, like obviously you're going to be stressed. You're a parent. It's normal. You're going to, like I tell you, I even said to you, like you're going to fall backwards and do things in a way where you're not going to feel so proud of yourself. And you're going to say things that you regret. That's a normal part of being a parent. Does this feel like it's more sustainable than the gentle parenting stuff that you were used to doing? Like, do you see that, like, what do you think of the sustainability of what I'm talking about versus what they were kind of trying to get you to do?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's more realistic for everyone involved. And ultimately, like as a parent, you want your kid to be autonomous, right? You want them to have that confidence and like that risk taking ability, but within certain parameters, right? And our son didn't have any of that. So I think that alone and just seeing little bits of that as we're going through, which we've never seen with anything we've done before, has like, of course, this is sustainable. Like, why would we ever go back to doing what we were doing? Because that was doing absolutely nothing. And it wasn't,
Yes.
we didn't see any improvement at all. We might see like a day where he was great, but then it was like a constant battle. And the gentle parenting thing, it just makes you feel like crap. And if you
It
feel like
does,
crap
doesn't it?
constantly, it really does. And it's like
Yeah.
the more that you try and do that and you try and to like, or you talk to your girlfriends about doing it, I feel like it just makes you a shitty parent because you feel like shit all the time. So then your kid knows that you feel like shit. And it's just like this vicious cycle.
Then they feel like shit that you feel like shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sucks. It
Everyone's just
sucks.
feeling terrible.
Yeah, totally, totally. I'm starting to kind of challenge that a little bit. I've been very leery about consciously challenging that publicly, but I think it's time that we kind of like dispel some of the overarching myths of this being. It's a well-intentioned idea. I think it's a well-intentioned idea. I think some of the concepts are great. I think it's a half-baked solution because there are no consequences. There is no realistic application where what you're doing parenting wise with your kids
Right.
ever transitions or translates well to the reality of what they're then going into. I think it's actually a massive disservice. It's being
Mhm.
touted as something that is really like loving, and it is in its intention, but the
Yep.
impact that you're having is not really great. And so, yeah,
Right.
so you're actually seeing that you can, as much as it's a little bit of a different kind of mindset, and it's a little bit more it's a little bit more confrontational, not in a negative, mean way, but there
Yeah.
is like some conflict that you're addressing. In
Yeah.
the long term, it's actually way more sustainable. And he's actually feeling better about himself. You guys are
Yeah.
feeling better about yourselves. Like all around, this is actually getting the whole family's better. You
Yes.
guys are
Yep.
sleeping, so you're not like walking around thinking it's January when it's August.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like right?
Yeah.
You're like, wait, this is the summer. Why am I wearing a hoodie?
Yeah.
You
He's
know?
funny too. Yeah, because he'll even like, randomly he'll pop in one night, and I just have to look at him, like crack my eyes and look at him, and he'll just be like, and just go right back to his room. Like, why? Why do you even have to say
Let me
hi?
ask you this. Let me ask you this. The most important reason I built this is because I really wanted parents and kids to like actually have fun together, because that's the only reason you have them. They're
Yeah.
expensive, they're time consuming, they're exhausting. You better have some fun with them. Were you having any fun with the gentle parenting versus what you're having now with
Zero.
them?
No,
I
I was
know.
a basket case.
Don't worry, everyone is at some point. I
I
think
was
the
at mom
only
drinking
reason,
wine every night.
yeah, because it's like, how else do you survive and just get through this? It's hell.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for you. I really appreciate you doing this. Is there anything that you want to leave parents with that might be helpful for them to understand if they're considering like buying my book, joining a group program that I'm doing, working with me like high level one-on-one coaching? Like what would you say to them?
Just try it and trust it and start small. Just do like one thing at a time and don't let it overwhelm you. And it'll all kind of work itself out. And, you know, pick one thing to work on and don't just go balls to the wall and make everything like chaos, right? And kind of like
Yeah.
teach your kid as you're going through it too. Like, this is going to be the way, our new way of our family. And I think getting them involved in that whole process is going to make it so much easier than just dictating, right? And saying, this is what we're doing now. And, you know, that doesn't work, obviously.
No, God, no. God, no. Well, thank you again. I appreciate
Yeah,
you
you're
doing
welcome.
this.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.